Breaking news. The government is now assigning partners to all singles, through a brutal, no-nonsense lottery. In this country where the population is dangerously low, being single is considered a crime. Everyone must be in a relationship before graduation. Can't find one yourself? Then head to the matchmaking bureau where the state will pick one for you. Once you win the draw, you have to accept. No excuses. Refuse and you'll be slapped with a 10 million single tax and banned from graduating. Our heroine's name is Yi Xingguang. But on the day before graduation, her boyfriend ran off with her best friend, leaving her single all over again. He, once the campus beauty, now forced to line up for a government-assigned partner. Utter humiliation. To graduate on time, she had no choice but to swallow her pride. Fuming, she pushed open the doors of the matchmaking bureau. Following the staff's instructions, she headed to the back where the lottery computers were lined up. Yi Xingguang tapped the screen casually, only to be greeted by a cold string of numbers. She had no idea what to pick. Just as she hesitated, the system suddenly began a 3-second countdown. Caught off guard, she jabbed at a random number. Bang! The screen popped up with an official congratulatory message. It then instructed her to head to the service desk to collect her assigned husband's profile. Less than 10 seconds later, her future husband had been decided. Was this process always this random? He sighed deeply. Fine. Just get the marriage certificate and graduate without any more trouble. The staff warmly explained the post-marriage procedures. For the first year after the lottery, she would be required to live at her partner's home, and officials could drop by unannounced. Xingguang had been secretly hoping she might stumble into love again, but the moment she saw the file, it read in bold letters, Yi Junqing, the world's richest man. Yi Xingguang nearly rolled her eyes right out of her head. Clutching the lottery slip like it was her last hope, she begged the staff to let her draw again. The staffer simply pushed up his glasses and gave her a long, patronizing lecture. If you were capable of finding one yourself, you wouldn't be here, would you? Stop being picky. Xingguang's fists tightened, tears welling up as she whimpered in frustration. Her reason for refusing was simple. This so-called future husband once said on national TV, "Anyone who draws me is digging their own grave." Resting his chin in his hand, the staff tried to reassure her. The matches are made with precise big data. Trust the state. But she still wanted to make one last desperate attempt. The staff's face turned cold. Refuse this marriage and you'll be fined 10 million, plus it'll tank your credit score. All she could do was throw her head back and howl, "Oh, why me?" Outside the matchmaking bureau, several luxury cars sped past. Inside one sat a breathtakingly handsome man, his voice low and commanding. Within 1 second, bring me all her information. His assistant immediately handed over Yi Xingguang's file with both hands. The man who had been drawn was none other than the world's richest man, Yi Junqing. At that very moment he arrived at the bureau. His personal assistant looked utterly defeated, nearly in tears. It turned out he'd forgotten to pay Junqing's single tax, which was why his boss's name had even appeared in the matchmaking pool. The moment news broke that the world's richest man had been picked in the lottery, it shot straight to the top of the trending list. The assistant was in full panic mode, terrified he'd be sent back to his hometown to feed pigs. But Junqing was unexpectedly intrigued. What kind of woman could draw him? When he glanced at the photo in the file, his deep eyes lit up with a trace of delight. It was her. Desperate to fix his mistake, the assistant arranged for a lawyer to meet with Yi Xingguang. Name your price, I'll give you 100 million to walk away from my young master. A woman as ugly as you isn't worthy of marrying him. Her hands clenched tightly as she fought to hold back her anger. The next second she beamed. The state assigned me this husband. If you've got a problem, take it up with the government. Seeing that Yi Xingguang wouldn't budge, the lawyer turned to personal attacks. You're just the daughter of a fisherman. Miss Xia, on the other hand, is a one-of-a-kind mermaid. What the lawyer didn't know was that this mermaid was Xingguang's own sister. Years ago, Xia Yanyan was born with leukemia. To save her, their parents gave birth to Xingguang. After taking her bone marrow, they tossed her into the ocean to fend for herself, only for a kind fisherman to rescue and raise her. The more Xingguang thought about it, the angrier she became. She won her husband fair and square in the lottery. Why should she give him up? The lawyer adjusted his glasses, a cold smirk tugging at his lips as he spread his hands. I hear your father has kidney failure. Got the money for dialysis. You can't even pay the single tax, you broke nobody. Xingguang shot to her feet shouting, you bootlicking mutt. A loud bang erupted behind her. Xingguang whipped around to see an impossibly handsome man walking straight toward her. She clenched her fists to hide her nerves. Who are you? The man tilted her chin up, leaning in. Yi Junqing. Xingguang jerked back in shock, nearly losing her balance. Junqing caught her hand, a smirk playing at his lips. You've got guts, daring to draw me. Then, to everyone's shock, he ordered, someone bring the civil affairs staff here. I'm accepting the match. His two lackeys froze, their faces going pale. The civil affairs staff rushed to the scene. Xingguang glanced at the voluntary match acceptance agreement on the table and signed her name without hesitation. She even held it up, pointing at her signature proudly. I signed it, loud and clear. Seeing Junqing still hadn't picked up the pen, the lawyer quickly reminded him, don't forget, you already have a mermaid fiancé at home. Junqing shot her a sidelong glance. I'm not running a zoo. Then he picked up the pen and signed his name in a few swift strokes. Less than a minute later, the two had their marriage certificate in hand. The staff enthusiastically explained the post-marriage rules. They must live together for 1 year and officials could drop by for surprise inspections. Xingguang immediately raised her hand. What if we don't get along? The staff replied that they'd have a 1-year adjustment period, but if they still insisted on divorce afterward, they'd have to pay a 10 million divorce fee. Her head was spinning. She felt like she'd just boarded a pirate ship. In mere minutes, she'd been roped into this marriage, not even sure if this computer match was accurate. Rumble. Thunder rolled across the sky, heavy rain threatening to pour any second. Xingguang quickly hopped out of the luxury car. She had to pack her things and get back before the rain fell, or her secret would be exposed. Inside the car sat her newly acquired husband Yi Junqing, currently on a video call with his older brother. He explained that he only agreed to the match so as not to affect his brother's election campaign. Then he ended the call. His gaze lingered on the drizzle outside the window, his expression unreadable. The assistant, thinking Junqing was unhappy with the match, tried to win favor by bad-mouthing Xingguang. Miss Yi is just a fisherman's daughter. I don't even know how the system paired her with you. Matches are supposed to be between families of equal standing. A sharp glint flashed in Junqing's eyes. You know nothing. But the assistant kept running his mouth. Sure, Miss Yi is pretty, top of her class and kind, but she's already had a boyfriend before. A woman even a college boy didn't want, and you, click. A car door suddenly opened. Yi Junqing stepped out, leaving the assistant stunned. Boss, where are you going? He scrambled out with an umbrella. Junqing loosened his tie. To get her. By then Xingguang had finished packing and stood at the dorm entrance, staring at the raging storm. The rain hit the ground so hard it splashed, making her quickly step back to avoid getting her feet wet. She prayed desperately, her feet mustn't touch the water or her mermaid tail would appear. Suddenly a familiar voice called her name. Xingguang looked up, and saw the cheating ex-boyfriend. The cheating ex stormed over, acting like he was the victim. Even after cheating, he had the nerve to accuse Xingguang of trash-talking his new girlfriend on the school forum. Xingguang stared at him, completely lost. What was he even talking about? What forum? Putting on a fake gentleman act, he said, breaking up with you on the day you got your marriage certificate was my fault. But you shouldn't have posted lies about us online. Xingguang felt more wrong than a heroine in a tragedy. She'd never written a single word on that forum. Suddenly his face twisted with rage. You vile woman! I must have been blind before, he yelled, swearing he'd never wronged her while they were dating. Then he started listing reasons for breaking up, claiming she was too delicate, like how she refused to walk in the rain, always making him carry her, or just staying home. Xingguang shook her head furiously in denial. The ex's face darkened. If you dare take a walk with me, I'll believe you still love me. Xingguang hadn't expected such a ridiculous demand. She stayed silent, already seeing him for the trash he was. He sneered, convinced she was exactly the delicate woman he accused her of being, using it to justify his cheating. Without another word, he turned and strode away, leaving her standing there in quiet heartache. Tears welled in her eyes, years of love, thrown away like garbage. The rain showed no sign of stopping, and a tall, broad-shouldered man was walking toward the dorm. He brushed past the departing ex. Junqing had clearly overheard their conversation that he let out a cold snort, his piercing gaze almost shoving the ex right off a cliff. A chill ran down the ex's spine as he felt the killing intent radiating from Junqing, and seeing the bodyguards behind him he decided to bolt. The pounding rain masked Junqing's footsteps as he approached. "Stop crying," he said flatly with zero warmth in his tone. Xingguang, tear-streaked, looked up in shock. She hadn't expected him to come pick her up. Even more shocking, he suddenly grabbed her hand. And the next second she found herself hoisted onto his back. Junqing lowered his voice. "If those tears aren't for me, that's cheating, and I could have you locked up for it." Xingguang flailed her tiny fists, squirming to get down. "You pervert. Let me go." He arched a brow. "Don't you like being carried by your boyfriend in the rain?" Her heart skipped a beat. Did he overhear her conversation with the ex? Seeing her go still, Junqing only tightened his grip around her legs. "The state told me to carry you, if you didn't want this, you shouldn't have drawn my number." Xingguang stole a glance at his profile, realizing that despite his icy tone, he was surprisingly considerate. She didn't even notice the faint blush creeping onto her cheeks, studying her not even half-old husband, she thought. His bright eyes, sharp nose. He was dangerously good-looking. How could a man like this agree to a state-assigned marriage? He answered without prompting. "Because my brother's running for president. Can't let political opponents get any dirt on me." Whatever warm points she'd just given him instantly dropped to zero. Catching her averted gaze, he smirked. "Don't tell me you thought I fell for you at first sight. Once the 1-year adjustment period is up, we can divorce. I'll cover your single tax." Xingguang was clearly thrilled with this arrangement, practically grinning from ear to ear. Oh yes, back to being single and no penalty fee. She promised on the spot that she'd be gone the moment the year was up. But Junqing didn't feel the satisfaction she expected, so Xingguang, just like before, all you want is to leave me. She didn't notice the shadow darkening his face, still bubbling with excitement as she thanked him. Junqing's reply was ice cold, "The farther you go, the better." Yet no one noticed the faint chill hidden deep in his eyes. Meanwhile, the news world's richest man now married had exploded online, and the mysterious private island Junqing called home was finally revealed. The roar of helicopter blades filled the air. They were flying home. That's right. This central island stood alone in the middle of the ocean, and unless you had billions, getting in was nothing but a fantasy. Xingguang never imagined she'd snag a billionaire husband and step right onto the peak of life. The moment they stepped inside, 2 rows of servants lined up, bowing in unison. "Welcome home, young Master Junqing. Welcome home, Miss Yi." Xingguang had never seen such a grand display. This was way over the top. The butler bowed politely, informing her that she was free to explore the estate. Junqing loosened his tie and with an impatient tone, said he had matters to attend to. By the time Xingguang realized he was already gone. Once Junqing left, the butler's demeanor cooled instantly. "Miss Yi, I must give you a serious warning. There is one forbidden area in this estate you must never enter. The mermaid swimming hall young master built for Miss Xia Yanyan." With that, the butler turned and left, leaving Xingguang standing there in confusion. The servants gradually dispersed, leaving Xingguang standing there in a daze. So this was what they meant by, marrying into wealth is like plunging into the deep sea. What happens to a mermaid who stays away from water too long? Xingguang had been carefully hiding her true identity all this time. Ever since the state lottery paired her with the world's richest man Yi Junqing, she had been bound by law to live with him for 1 year. It had now been half a month since she moved onto this isolated private island. A mermaid must return to the water at least once a week, or her legs would itch unbearably. But she hadn't found any large body of water here, resorting only to using small amounts of water during showers to soothe her legs. The red rashes on her skin were getting worse. Half a month of suppressing her tail clearly wasn't sustainable. Then she remembered. The butler had mentioned the island's forbidden zone. The mermaid swimming hall Junqing had built for Xia Yanyan. But just thinking about her current misery, all thanks to Xia Yanyan, made her instinctively reject the idea of touching anything that belonged to her. Curled up under her blanket, she kept chanting in her head, "Yi Xingguang, hold it together, hold it together." But all she could think about was the mermaid swimming hall. In the end, she threw the blanket aside. She couldn't take it anymore. Her legs itched unbearably. Forbidden zone or not, she was going for a swim. Under the cover of night, she snuck into the swimming hall. And wow, the world's richest man really didn't hold back. The place looked like a castle straight out of a fairy tale. With a click, she flipped the switch. Her breath caught at the sight before her. Suspended from the ceiling was a glowing mermaid sculpture. She couldn't help but think, if Junqing didn't love Xia Yanyan deeply, why else would he pour so much into this place? But that wasn't her concern right now. All that mattered was the embrace of the water. Her legs shimmered and transformed into a tail as she dove in. In her mermaid form, Xinguang was breathtaking. With a graceful flip, she leapt from the water. She floated lazily on the surface, gazing up at the mermaid chandelier above. Then, click, the sound of a door unlocking and a hand slowly pushed open the swimming hall's door. She hadn't expected anyone this late. Panicking, she dove back under, but the splash from her tail instantly caught the intruder's attention. It was Tang Zhou, the Yi family's adopted daughter, who preferred to present herself as a boy. She stood frozen, stunned. There was another mermaid in the world. Tang Zhou quickly pulled out her phone, bragging to her secretary as she animatedly described this mermaid, prettier than Xia Yanyan herself. But then a familiar voice came from behind. Ye Junqing, in a long robe and sleepwear, walked over. "What are you doing here in the middle of the night?" Caught off guard, Tang Zhou scratched her head sheepishly. "Just sobering up." But then Tang Zhou suddenly remembered the mermaid she'd just seen. She pointed excitedly at the pool. "I saw another mermaid, way prettier than your wife." Junqing stared at her coldly. "Did you drink expired wine?" Tang Zhou shook her head wildly. "Absolutely not." She rolled up her sleeves, clearly ready to dive in. "Don't worry, I'll catch her for you." But just as she was about to jump, Junqing appeared in front of her in a blur. "If there's no fish, are you planning to drink the whole pool dry?" He knelt on one knee, silently scanning the still water. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a slightly ajar door, and the strands of wet hair slipping through the gap. A faint smile tugged at his lips, as if everything was under his control. Yet he kept up the act, crouching beside the tipsy Tang Zhou. "This pool's only 8,000 square meters. One glance is enough. No fish here." Then he quickly ushered Tang Zhou out, giving someone the chance to escape. Bang! The swimming hall returned to its usual quiet. Hiding behind the door, Xinguang let out a long breath of relief. Thankfully, her secret was safe. Otherwise, she'd be in a pot of fish soup by now. Glancing down at her legs and seeing the swelling gone, she headed back to her room, ready for a well-deserved beauty sleep. The next morning, Xinguang was still buried under her blanket, lost in a sweet dream, until loud knocks rattled her door. Bang, bang, bang. Rubbing her sleepy eyes, she muttered, "Coming, coming." Whatever drowsiness she had left vanished the moment she opened the door. Standing there was Yi Junqing, wearing a deep V robe first thing in the morning. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Why on earth is he dressed so sexy at this hour? Before she could even react, Junqing walked straight into her room, leaving her utterly baffled. Handsome, what exactly are you doing in my room this early?" The next second, Junqing took off his robe right in front of her. Xinguang, still a pure-hearted maiden, spun around in embarrassment, shouting, "Yi Junqing, you pervert." But then she looked up and realized the mermaid painting on the ceiling was the exact same one from the swimming hall. Junqing stepped up behind her, calmly fixing his tie. "Had your fill. If you like my room this much, then why don't you?" That's when it hit her. She had slept in the wrong room last night. Holding her growling stomach, Xinguang headed to the dining hall for breakfast. Blissfully unaware of the tension, she beamed and waved at everyone. But the three people at the table sat in silence. Only Tang Zhou, the adopted daughter, sitting with her arms crossed and lips pursed, staring at her. Xinguang awkwardly walked over to Junqing, giving him a goofy smile and greeting, but he acted like he hadn't heard, sipping his precious 82 coffee. The handsome man beside him shifted his seat to make space. This was Ji Qishu, the Yi family's adopted son, gesturing for her to sit there. Apparently, the news of the world's richest man married had stayed on the trending list for over half a month and still wasn't coming down. Xinguang remembered well. Junqing only married her to avoid affecting his brother's election support rate. Facing his cold, stony expression, she refused to back down, straightening her back proudly. My acting's on par with Fan Bingbing herself. These home inspection visits will be a piece of cake." Half an hour later, the inspection staff sat stiffly at the table, stone-faced. Feeling the strange tension, Xinguang forced an awkward smile. The staff, clearly used to this kind of scene, said, "No need to be nervous, we're just here to check on your progress." Xinguang sighed inwardly, relying on this block of wood to initiate PD. Forget it. He kicked her brain into overdrive. Then, ding, an idea. Scooping up a spoonful of cream cake, her gaze turned sultry as she leaned in, lips slightly parted. "Open up, honey." But Junqing didn't react at all, leaving her frozen midair in pure awkwardness. Plan A failed, time for Plan B. The teary-eyed act, she bit her lower lip, letting out a pitiful little whimper. To her surprise, it worked. Junqing grabbed her hand and swallowed the entire spoonful of cake in one bite. The female inspector gushed, "Your love is truly earth-shattering. Until mountains crumble and the sky falls, you'll never part." Xinguang, still shocked a moment ago that the ice block was cooperating, slipped right into her role, her acting just as over the top as expected. She brushed her hair back and cooed, "Junqing really treats me so well." Linking arms with him, she boasted to the inspector, "I even slept in his room last night and had the sweetest dreams." Sensing her target was hooked, the inspector pressed on. "Miss Yi, have you too contributed to the population growth?" She then demanded evidence of their contribution. Xinguang dug her nails into Junqing's arm, silently begging him to save her. But Junqing just rested his chin in his hand, watching with amusement as she teetered on the brink of social death. Then she remembered overhearing Tang Zhou this morning, saying she'd picked up a mermaid scale Xinguang had shed in the swimming hall last night. Her expression darkened. "If we're a married couple, then if I go down in flames, you're coming with me." She suddenly kicked off her slippers and propped one foot right onto the dining table, revealing a mark on her heel. "This counts as proof we've been contributing to the population, right?" It was in fact a love bite Junqing had left there last night. The inspector looked like they'd just stumbled onto the juiciest celebrity gossip. The world's richest man has this kind of kink. Definitely a pervert. Junqing's expression darkened instantly. He'd never expected Xinguang to come up with that answer. Her cheeks flushed red, but once the lie was out, there was no taking it back. "That love bite is proof. He left it when we were all cuddled up last night." The inspector adjusted their glasses, turning their gaze to the silent Junqing. He cleared his throat and said coolly, 3 inches to the left of my wife's tailbone, there's an old scar. That should count as proof I've seen her body, right?" Then he stood and wrapped an arm around Xinguang's slim waist. With a domineering tone, he threw out, "Any other questions? We've got baby making to get back to, you're wasting my time." Seeing the lovey-dovey display, the inspectors quickly excused themselves, making way for the nation's baby-making efforts. Xinguang let out a long sigh, sweat beading on her forehead. She immediately turned to Junqing, demanding to know how he could pinpoint the exact location of the scar near her tailbone. Junqing lowered his gaze, a faint sadness flickering in his eyes. But in the next breath, his chin lifted arrogantly. "Obviously, I had someone investigate." Wanting to change the subject, he slid an arm around her again, voice dripping with tease. "And that love bite on your heel, that was all me last night." Xinguang quickly stepped back, explaining she'd only lied to provide evidence of affection. Junqing shook his head helplessly. "You could have just said there wasn't any." At that moment, Tang Zhou and Ji Qishu, who had witnessed the whole scene, walked over laughing. "Sure, they'll ask you for proof," they said, "but if you can't give it, it's just a verbal warning." Ji Qishu leaned in, trying to ask Xinguang out for coffee, but she flatly refused, saying she needed to find a job. Junqing shot her a sideways glance. "With your degree, what good job could you even get?" Xinguang bristled and quickly explained, "I was the top candidate in the monster TV station interviews. But a nepotism hire stole my spot." Junqing acted indifferent, grabbing his suit jacket and walking out. But the moment he stepped outside, he told Ji Qishu to arrange for Xinguang to join Monster TV. Turns out, the TV station's owner was Junqing himself. On her very first day at work, Xinguang ran into not one but 2 problems. She had just been about to greet her new co-workers when she spotted the woman who had stolen her boyfriend, Lu Yingying. The 2 locked eyes, instantly annoyed. Talk about a narrow road for enemies. Lu Yingying flaunted the ring on her finger. The day Yunshin and I got our marriage license, I heard you were at the matchmaking lottery. The campus beauty reduced to drawing lots, how pitiful. Xinguang didn't even flinch at her mockery. After her ex's betrayal, nothing she said could hurt her anymore. She simply peeled off a band-aid and tended to her wound. Just then a coworker suddenly shouted, "Check Weibo. They're saying the world's richest man's partner was domestically abused." Everyone rushed to look. Turns out the matchmaking bureau staff had gone too far in their gossip, even posting the photos online. Xinguang was speechless. That was clearly just a mark from her mermaid scale coming off. Calling it a love bite had already been pushing it. She let out a heavy sigh, her mind completely blank. The head of the news department saw the trending post and immediately asked, "Can we get an interview with this carp girl? You don't get this kind of scoop every day." A coworker frowned. "The matchmaking bureau's run by the government. We can't just pull public partner records. What, are we gonna identify her by her heel injury?" That one comment lit a spark in Lu Yingying's mind. Her gaze slid down to Xinguang's foot, and a devious idea began to form. Xinguang was already a bundle of nerves, sweat beading on her forehead. In her mind she could practically see Junqing turning into a demon king, ready to eat her alive. Great. This fake domestic abuse rumor is gonna turn real, isn't it? I'm way too young to get silenced. She tried to slip away quietly while everyone's attention was elsewhere. But green tea, Lu Yingying suddenly called out loudly, "Oh my, Yi Xinguang's foot is injured. The mark on her heel looks exactly like the carp girl's. Don't tell me, you're the abused wife of Yi Junqing?" Her words instantly stirred suspicion among her co-workers. Phones were whipped out, ready to compare the photo online with her heel in person. Backed into a corner. Her phone suddenly rang, giving her the perfect excuse to slip out. It was Junqing's secretary. He told her to clarify the rumor on Weibo immediately, or it could hurt his brother's election campaign. Relief washed over Xinguang just posting a statement. That was nothing. Thinking of Lu Yingying gossiping behind her back, she smirked inwardly. "You wanna mess with me? Not happening." She quickly typed out the clarification and hit send. "Now it's your turn to lose face." She slammed the office door open, crying out as she publicly admitted she was the carp girl. Then with a pitiful expression she told the room how she'd been falsely accused and slandered. Just when Lu Yingying thought her scheme had worked and she'd ruined Junqing's reputation. A coworker held up their phone. The carp girl just posted a statement. Everyone gasped. The so-called injury was actually a love bite. Lu Yingying's rumor collapsed instantly, smacking her right in the face. Xinguang's preemptive clarification now hit home. It wasn't abuse at all, leaving Lu Yingying completely thrown off. Xinguang then stepped forward, feigning innocence. "I told you I'm not the carp girl." With a perfectly serious face she added, "You can't just assume someone's identity based on a mark on their heel." Then she marched right up to the chief editor declaring, "I will defend the truth." After her little performance she earned waves of praise from her co-workers, while Lu Yingying's face turned a very dark shade of green. Xinguang landed one last blow, smiling sweetly as she explained for Lu Yingying, "She's just worried about me, that's all." Lu Yingying nearly choked on her own blood. Defeating a green tea with her own tactics, Xinguang had clearly outplayed her. Just as she was secretly savoring her victory, ding, and her phone chimed, catching her attention. She glanced at the screen and nearly jumped out of her seat. Her uncle had reposted her Weibo, adding, "Sister-in-law, don't be upset." And that uncle? None other than Yi Shiding, a presidential candidate with over 30 million fans. Realizing her idol had interacted with her, Xinguang lit up like she'd just won the lottery jackpot. Meanwhile, the assistant who saw the repost felt her days before being sent back to the farm to feed pigs were numbered. She was secretly scrambling for a way to fix things. When Junqing suddenly appeared behind her, his voice cold. "What are you looking at?" The assistant opened her mouth to explain, only for Junqing to snatch the phone right out of her hands. He lowered his gaze, staring at Xinguang's latest post. The word love burned into his eyes like a cruel joke. His mind was yanked back to the last life. Back then when Xinguang said, "I like you," her eyes were brimming with tears. Yet moments later she told him she had never liked him at all. So they had crossed paths in their past life. But if she hadn't loved him then, why was she getting so close to him now? Tossing the phone back to his assistant, his voice turned cold. Call the butler. From today onward, I don't want to see Xinguang again. Because his heart could no longer survive the pain of her walking away. Again. When she got home, Xinguang was told she was being kicked out. Hands on her hips, she demanded to know why. The butler, wearing a look of disdain, replied, Miss Yi, you're just moving next door. You simply won't be sharing the same building as young master anymore. He even added a cold warning, and please, stop provoking him. She guessed it must be because of that post she made earlier. With no other choice, she packed her things in silence, ready to move out. That's when Yi Junqing walked through the door. She strode straight up to him. Yi Junqing, what's the meaning of this? But he didn't even look at her, just walked past without a word as if she didn't exist. Xinguang shouted his name, her voice laced with anger. Yi Junqing's eyes froze for a split second. Then, clutching his chest, a wave of pain tore through him, so sharp it felt like his heart was being ripped apart. His illness, it was flaring up again tonight. Still, he was glad he'd sent her away from the main building earlier. Outside the door, Xinguang saw him collapse and couldn't help but feel a pang of worry. Even back in her room, scrolling through monster videos, she couldn't focus. She thought he was angry over her post from that morning, and honestly it had been a bit too sweet. She even wondered if he was worried it might ruin things between him and Xia Yanyan, completely unaware that the mermaid swimming hall was built for her. After some hesitation, she returned to the main building, determined to explain. But when she stepped into his bedroom, it was empty. Then from the study next door came a heavy thumping sound. She pushed the door open. And there he was, gripping his head, his face drenched in cold sweat. She stepped closer, her face full of concern, wanting to check on him. But he coldly shoved her hand away. Don't touch me. His eyes flickered with a dangerous glint, his voice sharp as he barked at her over and over. Leave. Xinguang stood her ground. You're my official match, that I have the right to care about your health. Before she could finish, Yi Junqing suddenly grabbed the glass of water on the table. Crash. It slammed into the wall just behind her. Shards of glass scattered across the floor, the sound cutting through the silence. As expected, that attitude was enough to make her storm out in anger. Yi Junqing closed his eyes, scenes from their past life flashing in his mind. How she had once driven him away without hesitation, that he tried to use those memories to stop himself from falling for her again in this life. But people are contradictions. Watching her back as she left, his heart twisted in pain. Looks like I'm going to lose you all over again. Just as he sighed, footsteps sounded at the door. Xinguang had come back, holding a glass of water, and offered it to him. She let out a small huff, tilting her chin defiantly. Think you can kick me out that easily? If you're not feeling well, then stop pretending you're fine. In the end, Yi Junqing's resolve softened, that he took the glass from her and murmured, Thanks. But the very next second, his heart lurched violently as if struck by a heavy blow. The glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. He gasped for air, his chest burning like it was on fire, yet he knew, keeping Xinguang here would only put her in danger. Ignoring her worried questions, he suddenly grabbed her wrist and yanked her out of the room. Outside, Xinguang pounded on the door, desperate to help him. But inside, Yi Junqing's eyes had turned a chilling blood red. His voice was low and hoarse. Little mermaid, I won't hurt you again, but tonight will not be ordinary. Yi Junqing's illness struck again, that he had locked himself away in the study, pain written all over his face. Xinguang had no choice but to rush to the main hall to find the butler. Yet the hall was filled with servants, standing in a crowd, none daring to take a single step forward. The butler finally spoke, his tone calm to the point of indifference. Miss Yi, the master has simply had too much to drink, that he'll be fine after some rest. Xinguang's chest tightened. Thinking of how he looked moments ago, she insisted on bringing the butler and servants with her. But all she got in return were averted gazes and hesitant silence. The butler repeated, Miss Yi, the master has ordered. Anyone who meddles will be dealt with. I suggest you don't do anything rash. She gritted her teeth and asked one last time, So you're really not sending him to the hospital? The only answer was suffocating silence. Staring at their cold, detached faces, Xinguang's anger flared. Clenching her fists, she turned sharply. Find out if anything happens, I'll take the blame myself. With that, she strode toward the study. In her heart, she prayed over and over, Yi Junqing, you'd better hold on. She pushed the door open and froze at the sight before her. Yi Junqing was chained to a chair, sweat dripping from his brow, his lips pale from sheer exhaustion. Xingguang instinctively reached out to touch his face. But she stopped herself, turning instead to the bookshelf to search for a key. The faint rustle of her movements stirred Yi Junqing from his haze of pain. His heavy eyelids lifted, and for a moment he wondered if he was hallucinating. It wasn't until she stood before him, key in hand, that he realized this woman had actually broken in. His gaze sharpened, danger flashing in his eyes as he growled a warning for her to stay away. But Xingguang only feigned fear, teasing, "Ooh, so scary. Problem is, I just can't watch someone die without doing anything. So what do you expect me to do?" With that, she crouched down and began unlocking his chains without a second thought. Breaking free from the chains, Yi Junqing clutched his chest and dropped to his knees, his breathing ragged as if flames were burning through him. He gripped the floor, knuckles turning white as he fought to suppress the violent force raging inside. Xingguang stepped forward to wipe the sweat from his brow, only for him to seize her hand and pull her down with him. The sudden closeness was so intense she could hear his heartbeat pounding against hers, making her chest tighten. Instinctively, she thought he was about to cross a line. But when she looked up, all she saw in his eyes was raw pain and desperate restraint. Realizing how much he was struggling, she slowly stopped resisting. Her pale, delicate neck was now exposed, its faint scent stirring something primal within him as his fangs began to show. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again, wavering on the brink of losing control, before forcing himself to stop. Tonight, once again, he let down every defense, all for her. Yi Junqing pulled her into his arms with a force that spoke of desperate longing, as if allowing himself to be selfish just this once. All he wanted was to hold his little mermaid through this torturous, endless night. His grip tightened until Xingguang could barely breathe. She pushed against him with all her strength, but he didn't budge. The craving for blood gnawed at his sanity, and right now she was the most irresistible temptation in the world. That dangerous hunger in his eyes was becoming impossible to suppress. Xingguang cried out his name again and again, her urgent voice fighting to pull him back from the brink. At last, clarity returned to his gaze, the crimson fading as exhaustion and guilt swept over him. He apologized over and over, terrified that he might lose control and hurt her. She gently patted his back, soothing him like one would calm a wounded beast. Humming a soft tune, she stayed by his side until he drifted into sleep. In that moment, the restlessness in his heart slowly melted away under her gentle humming. After the long, exhausting night, Xingguang woke up to an unexpected sight. For the first time, she was this close to Yi Junqing's face. And to her surprise, there was a rare softness in his expression, a stark contrast to the icy man from last night. An idea suddenly popped into her head. She quietly pulled out her phone and, click, snapped a photo. Grinning to herself, she typed up a cheeky caption for her social media post. Within a minute, the comments section was already blowing up. Honestly, feeding the internet a dose of relationship goals, first thing in the morning, felt pretty amazing. But then, his voice came from right behind her. Her heart skipped a beat and she quickly hid her phone. Yi Junqing's brows furrowed in anxiety, terrified that he might have actually bitten her last night. Only after confirming she was unharmed did he finally breathe a quiet sigh of relief. But the very next second, his tone turned sharp as he warned her never to barge in like that again. Before she could respond, his assistant rushed in, cutting their conversation short. Xingguang quickly spoke up, telling the assistant about Yi Junqing's sudden episode last night. The assistant leaned in and whispered something into Yi Junqing's ear. A bad feeling hit Xingguang instantly. She decided it was time to quietly slip away. But before she could take a step, her wrist was grabbed at. Yi Junqing demanded to know how she even got into the main building when he had clearly ordered her removal. Knowing she was in the wrong, she put on a shameless front. "I wanted to come, so what?" She thought he was being ungrateful. After all, she'd stayed with him the entire night and now he was scolding her. She flung his hand away and turned to leave. His eyes darkened. In a low voice, he ordered the assistant to pull last night's surveillance footage, and to fire every servant who had failed to stop her. He wasn't truly angry. What he felt was fear. Fear of what could have happened if he had lost control. If that ever happened, he might lose his beloved little mermaid, all over again, and he would never allow that. Yi Junqing made a silent vow. He would never allow Xinguang to be hurt again, not even by his own hands. Meanwhile, the woman he had just coldly driven away was forced to continue her job, this time covering an interview at the Yi Group. By now, Yi Junqing's private life had become a hot topic among the media. As he stepped out of the venue, a reporter suddenly blocked his path. "Mr. Yi, you once publicly claimed to be a firm believer in staying single, even swearing to multiple outlets that you'd never married, so why have you now accepted the mermaid girl as your official partner?" Xinguang stood frozen beside them, holding the microphone, her heart pounding in anticipation. What would he say? Yi Junqing cast her a brief, cold glance. His reply was calm yet cuttingly firm. "I trust the nation's big data match results, that's why I chose her." Failing to get the juicy scoop she wanted, the reporter set another trap. "So Mr. Yi, are you saying you only accepted the state's arrangement, and have no feelings for the mermaid girl at all?" Yi Junqing's eyes drifted toward Xinguang in the distance. But instead of answering, a flash of their argument from that morning crossed his mind, his brow furrowed, and he spat out 2 words, "boring." Without another glance, he walked straight past her. Xinguang froze. Was this man out of his mind? Didn't he realize those 2 words could throw her straight into the center of a public storm? Sure enough, her worst fear came true. The moment his interview aired, netizens began speculating, had all the sweet moments mermaid girl shared online been fake? Things got worse when someone claiming to be a maid from the Yi household jumped in, saying all those handsome photos of Yi Junqing were just drunken poses. In an instant, the public opinion flipped. What was once an enviable official romance became the butt of online ridicule. That's when her gossip-loving boss popped up. "Xinguang, you were at the interview yesterday. Is it true what they're saying, that Yi Junqing doesn't love the mermaid girl?" Her palms turned clammy. She forced a shaky smile and lied. "I didn't notice anything." But her boss immediately ordered, "Then go interview him again, and this time find out the real story no matter what it takes." Inside, Xinguang was falling apart. "Damn it, Yi Junqing, you've completely ruined me." And just like that, her boss mercilessly kicked her out of the office. With no other choice, she dragged herself to the swimming hall where everything had happened last night. She tried to go in again, but 2 security guards blocked her path. Xinguang quickly flashed her press ID, but they still shook their heads. She let out a bitter sigh. So this is the so-called adult world. Nothing comes easy. Just then, a hand landed on her shoulder. She turned to see a blonde man with a slick smile asking, "So my date can't go in either?" The guards glanced up, instantly paling. This was none other than Han Qingbei, a media tycoon. Fearing for their jobs, the 2 guards immediately bowed and apologized. Xinguang pointed at him in shock. "You're the one who came to me." But the man raised a finger to his lips, signaling her to keep quiet. And then she realized, this was the man who'd once sought her out to change his fate, that if anything, she was the one who had saved his life. Hands in his pockets, Han Qingbei smirked. "So what's the deal? Why are you here at the swimming hall? Need me to help with something?" Xinguang waved her hands shyly, first thanking him for supposedly helping her land a job at the TV station, then politely declining. "It's fine, I don't want to trouble you too much." A bead of sweat rolled down Han Qingbei's cheek as he scratched his head. Actually, I didn't help you get into the station." Xinguang blinked in confusion. If it wasn't him, then she'd better work even harder on her own. Putting on her most innocent face, she pleaded, "Then, could you at least get me inside to interview Yi Junqing?" He casually ran a hand through his hair. "Yi Junqing? Perfect, that he's a good friend of mine." Without another word, he grabbed her hand and dashed off, like he was on a mission to repay a debt. Whoosh. In seconds they were at the VIP room. Han Qingbei threw the door open and shouted, "Second Master Qing, my girl wants to interview you, got a minute?" Yi Junqing sat upright, staring them down. Then his eyes darkened, a flash of killing intent. "Your girl?" Xinguang's face went pale. Yep, she was officially doomed thanks to this guy. Han Qingbei thought showing off his bro power was the coolest move ever. With a grin he said, "That's right, her name's Yi Xinguang, the woman I treasure the most. Second Master Qing, you gotta give me some face here." Yi Junqing's face darkened even further. "Your woman," he repeated, each word laced with ice. That was practically shoving Xinguang off a cliff. She quickly shoved his arm down and blurted, "We're not together." I'm just here for an interview. In front of her husband's best friend, she forced herself to act like she didn't even know Yi Junqing, reintroducing herself from scratch. Yi Junqing sat there, his expression blank, clearly holding back a storm. His assistant quickly stepped in. It was Mr. Ji who arranged for Miss Yi to interview you. Yi Junqing glanced at the red wine in his hand and said flatly, I can accept your interview. Then he lifted his hand and pointed. Han Qingbei was to leave. Xingguang wanted to scream, but for the sake of her assignment, she kept quiet and played along. Surprisingly, Han Qingbei read the room instantly, patting his chest. All right, I'm going. As Han Qingbei was leaving, he couldn't resist throwing one last tease over his shoulder. Babe, after the interview, come watch me swim. I'll show you what a real mermaid line looks like. Xingguang instantly felt a chill, like she was exactly 0.0000001 seconds away from death. Forcing a cheerful smile, she turned to Yi Junqing. Now that the irrelevant people are gone, shall we start the interview? To prove she had no ulterior motives, she quickly raised 3 fingers, swearing she'd follow every marriage bureau rule and never cheat during their match period. Then she turned on the charm, gently touching her husband's lips. When it comes to family background or looks, who could ever compare to you, Yi Junqing? It was the first time he'd heard his wife sincerely compliment him, and a faint smile tugged at his lips. Xingguang was stunned. The legendary stone-faced man actually smiled. Yi Junqing quickly coughed to hide it. Let's get to the interview. Xingguang straightened up and asked, Mr. Yi, there's been a huge buzz online about the so-called mermaid girl staged photos. As the person involved, what do you have to say? He replied flatly, baseless rumors. Xingguang waved her tiny fists impatiently. Can you be a bit more specific? Like, for example? People online are saying the koi girl is vain and doesn't deserve you. The stronger you refute that, the easier it'll be for me to report back. Yi Junqing set down his wine glass with elegant precision. Do you think I'd let a woman post staged photos without my consent? If it's online, it's because I allowed it. His gaze lingered on her, deep and deliberate. As for whether she's worthy, we're a state-certified perfect match. No one could suit me better. As he spoke, his fingers slowly traced the back of her chair, his body leaning in with a hint of teasing heat. I, Yi Junqing, have chosen her, forever. Xingguang's cheeks flushed, her heart pounding wildly. Is he lying? Then why does he look so serious? She forced herself to snap out of it, recalling the day he appeared after the marriage lottery. This is just something he's saying for the public. His real love could never be me. Xingguang, his voice cut sharply into her thoughts. She quickly stood and bowed slightly. Sorry, I spaced out. Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Yi. The interview is over. When Yi Junqing heard his wife was going to say hello to Han Qingbei, the scene of that flashy show-off from earlier instantly replayed in his mind. He stood up immediately. I'll go with you. Xingguang blinked, thinking her husband was also going for a swim. Inside the noisy swimming hall, Xingguang scanned the crowd for Han Qingbei. Suddenly, the flashy peacock emerged from the water with a dramatic splash. He strutted over proudly and Xingguang even complimented, Not bad, your body's pretty great. Han Qingbei grinned smugly, Told you so, now take a few more shots for me. But the moment she lifted her phone, she realized her husband had somehow appeared right beside them, showing off an even deadlier physique. The wealthy husband stood there, every muscle perfectly defined, radiating quiet dominance. The fangirl in her completely short-circuited, nosebleed incoming as she snapped away, chest, abs, those long legs, enough to make her nosebleed shoot 2 meters. Han Qingbei thought she was taking pictures of him and started striking cool, smug poses, completely unaware that Xingguang's camera was secretly aimed at Yi Junqing. But Junqing misunderstood the scene entirely. My wife, taking photos of another man, his cold voice cut through the air. Xingguang. The chill in his tone made her break out in a cold sweat. She quickly hid her phone behind her back and forced an awkward smile. You're fast. If there's nothing else, I'll just head back to work. Junqing, holding back his fury, reached over and deleted the photos. Xingguang froze, still processing what just happened. His voice dropped lower, colder. Delete all the photos. Don't make me say it a 3rd time. But those perfect husband shots were rare treasures. How could she delete them so easily? Xingguang immediately switched to her cutest, most pleading act. Come on, I promise I'll keep them just for myself. No one else will see them. Don't make me delete them, okay? But the thought of another man's half-naked photo sitting in her phone made Juanqing's blood boiled. He snatched the phone away. No delete. Then that interview you just did, consider it cancelled. Those words hit Xinguang like a boulder, dragging her straight into the abyss. So the entire interview just now had been nothing but an act. She lowered her head with a bitter smile, not even sure what she had been hoping for. Hurt and angry, she snatched her phone back. It's just a few photos. Do you really have to threaten me like this? Juanqing's gaze stayed icy, unyielding. Xinguang, you'd better remember your place. At that moment, a man and a woman began walking toward them. The woman was none other than the so-called national treasure mermaid, Xia Yanyan. Xinguang's eyes suddenly widened, her pupils trembling. Because the man beside Yanyan was Xia Chaoye, her older brother. Her real, long-lost brother. Memories buried deep came rushing back. How as a child she had been mocked for being ugly, rejected by everyone. Even her own parents had treated her as nothing more than a bone marrow donor for her sister. The only person who had ever truly cared for her was her brother. But the moment her brother left for school in another city, their parents had thrown her, sick and frail, back into the sea. She had always wondered, had he ever looked for her? Had he grieved when she was gone? Just then Xia Chaoye turned to Juanqing. And this young lady is? Xinguang swallowed down the tide of emotions and smiled politely. I'm Xinguang, a reporter from Coco, here to interview Mr.Ye. But deep inside she couldn't stop the faint, desperate hope. Maybe her brother would recognize her. Chaoye stayed silent, but Yanyan suddenly stepped in between Xinguang and her husband, flashing a bright smile. Juanqing must be hard to interview, right? Want me to help? On the surface she was being friendly. In truth, it was a blatant claim of territory. Chaoye looked at his sister fondly. Don't disturb Miss Ye's work. Yanyan nodded sweetly. To Xinguang it was just another quiet heartbreak. She mocked herself in silence. What are you even hoping for? Your brother doesn't remember you. She gave a cool farewell to everyone, ready to walk away. But Juanqing wasn't done. He insisted she delete the photos. That's when Yanyan kindly spoke up on her behalf, only to pivot, reminding her to respect the privacy of public figures. She deliberately pulled Juanqing to stand by her side, shooting Xinguang a taunting glance. Her brother doted on Yanyan without recognizing her, and now she thought even her husband was taking Yanyan's side. The anger burned in her chest. Snatching out her phone, she shouted, "Look closely, Juanqing. All your photos are right here, and I'm deleting them now." Juanqing froze. He'd always assumed she'd been photographing Han Qingbei, not him. But before he could say a word to stop her, Xinguang had already wiped every single photo in one swift motion. She turned and walked away without looking back. Juanqing's thoughts were in chaos. He didn't even bother to respond to Yanyan. Yanyan, however, didn't care. Her gaze sharpened with malice. "Xinguang, you were never worthy of being Juanqing's official match." The world believed that Xia Yanyan was the only mermaid in existence, but no one knew Night Xinguang carried the same secret. Mermaids were born with extraordinary musical talent, so great that even Beethoven himself would yield in admiration. Yet Xia Yanyan's gift wasn't even a fraction of Xinguang's. One day Xinguang casually sat down at the piano in a restaurant. Her melody flowed with elegance, tinged with a restrained sorrow, each note pulling at the listener's heartstrings. A highly respected music master in the industry was utterly captivated. It had been years since he'd heard such a soulful original composition. Unfortunately, Xinguang left in such a hurry that he never saw her face. Determined to find her, the master organized a national music festival, issuing a public call for the mysterious pianist. Believing herself to be the one and only mermaid in the world, Xia Yanyan shamelessly declared in public that she was the woman the old master was looking for. But at that very moment, Yi Juanqing publicly slapped her down on Weibo, proclaiming across the internet that Xinguang was his little sweetheart. Instantly, every reporter in the audience turned their eyes on Xia Yanyan, eager to watch the drama unfold. Her pride couldn't tolerate such humiliation. She knew that if it weren't for political reasons, that White Lotus would never have married Yi Juanqing. Her expression darkened, seething with hatred for Xinguang. Yet Xinguang paid her no mind. Her entire focus was on the stage. At that moment, Professor Zhou was invited on stage by the host to give a speech. Yesterday, he said, I had the rare pleasure of hearing a truly remarkable performance. Unfortunately, when I tried to find the musician, they were already gone. I only hope I can hear it once more in my lifetime. The audience immediately began whispering to each other, speculating about the mysterious performer's identity. Summer Yinyan's mind began to scheme. If she could make Professor Zhou believe that she was the one playing last night, she could easily shift the media's attention to herself. She quickly shot her assistant a meaningful look, which the assistant instantly understood. Standing up with a smile, the assistant thanked Professor Zhou for his high praise and added, to be honest, our Yan did play a piece in the lobby of the Triumph Hotel last night, right around 8 o'clock. Her fans erupted in excitement. Yan, however, pretended to be modest, scolding her assistant for revealing it so soon and disrupting the opening ceremony. The assistant played along perfectly, keeping the act going. Sensing an opportunity, the host immediately invited Yan to perform on stage. With Professor Zhou's encouragement, she gracefully walked over to the piano. Sitting down with poise, her fingers touched the keys, and a stream of sweet, melodious notes filled the air. The audience quickly fell under the spell of the beautiful music. Only Professor Zhou's expression gradually shifted from pleased to sour. Xinguang closed his eyes helplessly. This stiff, mechanical playing was nothing but an embarrassment to the merfolk. The female host piled on the flattery. No wonder this is the masterpiece Professor Zhou has longed for. What a rare audiovisual feast. Yan, not missing a beat, pretended to be moved to tears and gave an emotional speech. Throughout the praise and fanfare, Professor Zhou simply smiled faintly, never voicing his own opinion. But when Yan hurriedly announced she would name the piece before my time runs out, Professor Zhou finally spoke up. Let's not, your piece is indeed good, but it's not before my time runs out. Yan's face turned green, then pale, yet she forced a smile and invited him to listen to other tracks from her album, desperate to save face. Zhou just shook his head. You've played long enough, take a break. A clear voice rose from the audience. Professor Zhou, is this the melody you're looking for? Xinguang hummed a couple of bars. Professor Zhou lit up with excitement. That's it. Let me see who's singing. A spotlight landed on Xinguang as she stood, calm and composed. I didn't quite catch it. Hum it once more, he said. Her ethereal, lilting voice drifted through the hall again. Professor Zhou looked as if he'd struck gold. You're the girl who played last night. Xinguang didn't want to admit it and quickly claimed it was a friend playing the instrument. Xia Yan clenched her teeth. Why did this little white lotus have to show up everywhere? Seeing the so-called national treasure, still unconvinced, Professor Zhou chuckled softly. He pointed to the piano on stage. Come up and play a piece, let me listen properly. Xia Yan cursed inwardly. This old man was clearly out to humiliate her in public. Xinguang walked to the piano with quiet confidence. Last night's piece had been inspired on the spot and unfinished. Today she decided to improvise freely. Closing her eyes, she let herself sink into the music. Her nimble fingers danced across the keys, the melody now lighter and sweeter, free from the bitterness of the night before. Music has a way of touching hearts. Whether or not one understands music theory, even the tone-deaf would find this tune beautiful and moving. Xia Yan was fuming. She'd just lost to this little white lotus. Even in her own specialty, her eyes glinted with malice. But just as Xinguang's fingers left the keys, the host cried out in alarm, Xia Yan has fainted. Quick, save our national treasure. Photographers in the audience scrambled to capture the moment. Xinguang felt a twinge of concern, but Professor Zhou remained calm. Don't worry, she's faking it. Xinguang quickly turned to call someone over for help. Professor Zhou cut straight to the point. There's no such friend you mentioned, is there? Xinguang felt a little awkward. How could you tell? Zhou chuckled knowingly. That's nothing that I can even tell you're in love. Yesterday's tune was tinged with sorrow, but today it's full of sweet romance. Thinking of how kind Yi Junqing had been to her, Xinguang shyly patted her own cheeks, silently warning herself. Don't you dare actually fall for him. Back at the villa, she lay on the bed until hunger suddenly struck. Wandering into the lavishly decorated kitchen, she couldn't help but sigh. This is way too well equipped. Her eyes roamed over the neatly arranged ingredients before locking onto the steak. You'll do. Soon, a perfectly seared, mouth-watering steak was plated and ready. Just as she leaned in to savor the aroma, a familiar voice called out, "Xinguang, what are you doing?" She turned to see Yi Junqing in a black robe hanging loosely open, his toned chest exposed. His eyes locked onto the steak in her hands. "You cooked this?" "Ah, no, wait." Before she could finish, Yi Junqing snatched it from her. "Perfect timing. I'm starving." Xinguang tried to stop him, but it was too late. Yi Junqing had already cut a piece and popped it into his mouth, fully expecting a gourmet treat. The moment it touched his tongue, his taste buds practically filed a complaint. He had never tasted steak this bad, but in order not to crush his wife's confidence, he forced himself to finish the entire plate in one go. Xinguang looked like she was about to cry. "You ate it all. What am I supposed to eat? I'll make it up to you with another steak." Without missing a beat, he grabbed a spatula. "And get your phone out," he added. "Part of the official pairing agreement is that I have to cook you a meal. Record it so you've got proof." Xinguang had been secretly touched at first, but realizing it was just to meet a rule left her a bit disappointed. Still, she obediently lifted her phone to record him. Watching his practiced movements, she had to admit, he really did look like he knew what he was doing. In his past life, he had practiced for a long time just so his ailing little mermaid could taste a perfect steak. But back then, she never once got to try it. Even though in this life he'd sworn to keep his distance, he still couldn't bring himself to do it. "See this. Yi Junqing is cooking me a steak. Anyone who says the lucky carp girl staged her own posts, I'll sue you for slander." Holding up her phone, Xinguang beamed. "Qing, getting to eat a steak you cooked with your own hands makes me so happy." Then she wrapped her arms around his waist and murmured softly, "Thank you, darling." Seeing his wife smile like that made Yi Junqing feel every bit of effort tonight was worth it. When the perfectly cooked aromatic steak was ready, Xinguang was amazed. But no public display of affection was complete without one more step. In a sweet, coquettish tone she asked, "Qing, will you feed me?" Yi Junqing's face turned slightly red, his heartbeat quickening. "What did you just say?" "I've been filming you this whole time, so my hands are full. Just feed me once, okay, darling?" What man could possibly resist that kind of sweet coaxing? Yi Junqing cleared his throat, trying to hide the excitement in his chest. He speared a piece of steak and held it to Xinguang's lips. The closeness made her heart race and her cheeks flush for reasons she couldn't name. Embarrassed, she pushed him away. "No more filming, I've got enough material." Yi Junqing's smile froze instantly. Guiltily, she fiddled with her phone, yet could still feel the storm cloud hanging behind her. She rushed to explain, "If we don't look affectionate enough, the marriage bureau will think it's all staged. Please don't take it to heart." Yi Junqing felt his heart shatter, so it had all been an act. He gave a cold laugh, leaning closer. "You were awfully good at acting just now. Who did you practice with? Han Qingbei?" Xinguang shook her head quickly. "No. But to get through this marriage bureau thing, we'll have to act like that a lot. Don't get too into character." His jealousy flared and he tilted her chin up with his fingers. "Xinguang, right now you're my official partner. For this entire year, you'll keep your head down and your heart on me. Think about another man and I'll accuse you of emotional infidelity." Her eyes blazed at his threat. "Oh, so you're allowed to have someone you like, but I'm the only one getting accused?" Yi Junqing opened his mouth to explain, but she grabbed him by the collar. "If I can't think about anyone else, then you remember this. For as long as we're officially paired, you're my man. No one else gets a chance. Otherwise, I'll be the one suing you." On her way out, she didn't forget to snatch up the steak. Left behind, Yi Junqing stood there, touching the spot on his collar where she'd grabbed him, replaying her words in his head. "She just called me her man, but she also said I like someone else. Who would dare?" He immediately picked up the phone and called Fuzhou. "Look into that for me. And make a list of every man who's had contact with Yi Xinguang. Anyone trying to get close to my woman is signing his own death warrant."